Thor, 2011. Directed by Kenneth Branagh, Thor was Marvel's big gamble at the time. Up until then, audiences had only seen grounded heroes like Iron Man and the Hulk. Chris Hemsworth took on the role, and honestly, I think this movie was the real start of his rise to stardom. The story follows Thor, the arrogant prince of Asgard, who gets banished to Earth by Odin to learn humility. That's where he meets Jane Foster, played by Natalie Portman, and slowly discovers what it means to be a true hero. Here's a cool behind the fact that Chris Hemsworth almost didn't get the role of Thor. His brother Liam Hemsworth was actually in the final running too. Imagine if Thor had been played by his brother instead. Now, critics had mixed reviews at first, while others thought the Earth scenes were too simple. But audiences enjoyed it, and Thor quickly became a fan favorite, setting up the Avengers. For me, I think this film is underrated. Sure, it's not as flashy as later Marvel movies, but I really liked how it balanced the cosmic world of Asgard with the small town setting on Earth. And honestly, I think Loki's introduction stole the show. Tom Hiddleston as Loki was just perfect. What do you guys think? Was Thor a strong debut, or does it feel a little dated compared to today's Marvel movies? Drop your thoughts in comments. The Avengers, 2012. This movie was honestly a game changer for the MCU. For the first time, we saw Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, Hulk, Black Widow, and Hawkeye all come together as Earth's mightiest heroes. When it comes to Thor, this was a big step in his journey. Up until then, he was more of this mythical Asgardian god from his solo movie. But in Avengers, we saw him clash with Iron Man and Cap, and then eventually put his differences aside to fight alongside them. Plus, it was personal for him, because the main villain was his own brother Loki. His fight scenes against the Chitauri, and of course teaming up with Hulk on the helicarrier, are still some of my favorites. Thor: The Dark World. This movie came out in 2013 as the second solo Thor film, and honestly, it often gets labeled as one of the weaker MCU entries. But I don't fully agree with that. I actually think it has some really fun moments, especially with Thor and Loki's brotherly dynamic. In the movie, Thor has to face the Dark Elves, led by Malekith, who's trying to plunge the universe back into darkness using the ether, which later we learn is one of the Infinity Stones. Malekith looked cool, but I don't think he left a big impact compared to someone like Loki or later Thanos. What about you? Did you feel the villain worked here, or kind of forgettable? As for reception, critics were kind of mixed. The movie sits around the middle on Rotten Tomatoes, and a lot of people felt it was too dark in tone, especially compared to how fun Thor would become later in Ragnarok. Personally, I think this film has underrated moments. For example, the scene where Loki shows his true grief after his mother Frigga's death. Honestly, Tom Hiddleston killed it there. Overall, I'd say The Dark World isn't perfect, but it's not as bad as people make it out to be. It's got heart, some good action, and it sets up the Infinity Stones storyline for later. Avengers: Age of Ultron, 2015. Directed by Joss Whedon, and it's the sequel to the first Avengers movie. This time, the big villain is Ultron, an eye created by Tony Stark and Bruce Banner, who was meant to protect the Earth but instead decides the only way to save humanity is by wiping it out. I think Thor's role in this movie is kind of interesting because he isn't the main focus, but he brings in the bigger cosmic side of things. Remember that vision scene where he sees the Infinity Stones? At the time, I felt like it was a bit confusing, but looking back, it was basically Marvel planting seeds for Infinity War and Endgame. Chris Hemsworth actually improvised a lot of Thor's humor in the film. Personally, I think it's not the best Avengers movie, but it has some really awesome scenes, like the Hulk vs. Hulkbuster fight, and of course, the moment when everyone tries to lift Thor's hammer. For me, I'd say Age of Ultron is like the middle child of the Avengers movies, not the best, not the worst, but still really fun to rewatch. Thor: Ragnarok, 2017. Directed by Taika Waititi, and honestly, I think this is the movie where a whole new fan base for Thor really started. Add in Valkyrie, Loki, and the insanely powerful Hela, and the film just feels way more alive. I really think the humor and crazy visuals are what made people connect with Thor in a new way. The story basically follows Thor after he gets captured on the planet Sakaar, and instead of his usual hammer-smashing god vibes, we see him go through this whole buddy adventure with Hulk. And here's a fun behind-the-scenes fact that Taika Waititi actually played Korg himself. A lot of Korg's lines were improvised, which explains why that character feels so naturally funny. In terms of performance, the movie was a massive success. Critics loved it, with a Rotten Tomatoes score in the 90s, and audiences showed up big time. It made over $850 million worldwide. Compared to the earlier Thor movies, that's a huge jump, which again makes me feel like this was the turning point for Thor's popularity. One of my favorite scenes was the Thor vs Hulk arena fight. So yeah, I honestly think Ragnarok wasn't just another Marvel movie, it was the one that redefined Thor and made him way more relatable and fun. But what about you guys? Did you become a Thor fan because of this movie too, or were you already a fan from the earlier ones? Avengers Infinity War, 2018. For me, honestly, it's one of his best appearances in the entire MCU. We see Thor go through a lot, from losing almost everything at the start of the film, to forging Stormbreaker, and then finally arriving in Wakanda. Now I don't know about you guys, but I still remember the reaction in theaters when Thor entered Wakanda with Rocket and Groot. Chris Hemsworth has actually said in interviews that he felt a new sense of freedom playing Thor after Ragnarok, and you can really see that energy carry into Infinity War. Critics also praised the movie a lot, and it went on to become one of the highest-grossing films of all time. What do you guys think? Was the Wakanda entrance your favorite Thor moment too, or do you prefer another scene, like when he forged Stormbreaker, or maybe even his interactions with Rocket? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I really want to know which Thor moment you connected with the most. Avengers Endgame, 2019. Endgame was honestly one of the biggest movie events of all time. It wrapped up over a decade of Marvel storytelling, broke records at the box office, and gave us those iconic moments we still talk about today, like Cap wielding Mjolnir and the final Avengers assemble. But for me, one of the most interesting arcs was Thor's. We all saw him go from the powerful god of thunder to, well, as some fans call him, Fat Thor. Now, I know this part of the movie gets mixed reactions. Some people felt it was too much of a joke, while others appreciated the depth behind it. Personally, I think it was actually a natural and kind of brave choice. Thor had lost everything, his family, his friends, even his sense of purpose. For me, it made him more relatable. Like, even gods can fall apart. Of course, Chris Hemsworth had a blast with the role. Fun fact that the prosthetics and bodysuit he wore added about 60 to 70 pounds. For me, I liked the mix of comedy and tragedy. That scene with his mom, Frigga, hit really hard. But what about you guys? Did you like Thor's arc in Endgame? Thor Love and Thunder, 2022. The movie was supposed to blend comedy, action, and a cosmic love story with Jane Foster becoming the mighty Thor. It had Christian Bale as Gorr the God Butcher, which sounded so epic on paper. But honestly, I was pretty disappointed. I felt like the movie leaned too hard into jokes, and sometimes the emotional moments didn't land as strongly as I hoped. For me, someone like Zack Snyder, who has a darker, more mythological style, might have given Thor a real epic, godlike treatment. Imagine Thor in that kind of visual style, wow, that would have been insane. I still think some scenes were fun. The black and white Shadow Realm fight, that was actually pretty awesome. And Christian Bale, he gave way more depth to Gorr than the script even allowed. As far as performance, critics were kind of split. On Rotten Tomatoes, it's sitting at a mixed score. Some praised the humor, others thought it was overdone. But I've seen a lot of fans online saying they felt the same way I did, expecting something bigger, maybe more emotional, and instead getting a comedy. Do you think Marvel should have gone for a darker version of Thor, or do you prefer the more light-hearted take? Let me know in the comments, I'd love to hear your take. Alright guys, thanks so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to hit that like button, it really helps the channel out.